Oh, Kada. What's going on, sir?
Oh, Kada, my brother.
My brother from another mother.
Yes, sir.
Teaching me all these little Punjabi words.
Hey, man. Before you know it, you're going to be around some strangers who are Punjabi. You'll be having a conversation with them.
At least I'll be able to say, what's up?
Hanji.
You know
Hanji real
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Be Hanji. Well, like, what's up? And yeah. What's up?
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Got it.
Yep.
That they're going to be like, is this guy like, what's wrong with
awesome.
him? So at least he knows 2 words.
That's right. Now we'll teach you some more. Not the bad ones, though.
So we're back.
Yes,
another
sir.
day, another dollar.
Yes,
another
sir.
week, another episode.
Yes, sir.
See,
I like the gear, though.
I mean,
that's
you know,
fresh.
Had to pop it out. We got a little.
I like that.
Little wardrobe. Might be a few more on their way.
Hey, man, that's slick. I like that.
A few more on their way. I like the weight.
Yeah, it makes it pop.
But see now though, I'm under pressure.
What's that?
The pressure is to keep the weight clean.
Yeah.
I don't wear a lot of weight. In case you haven't noticed,
that is true.
You know I don't wear a lot of weight. That's because I can be a messy eater sometimes. So you know,
no wings
and
without,
drinker.
No wings with that.
No
shirt.
wings or coffee, and end up getting a little coffee stain on it.
Yeah.
So this one might have to.
Let's keep that crisp.
This one might have to stay in the Think RBA studios.
That's fine. That's fine. We got a wardrobe.
Wardrobe change.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode.
All right.
And this is one we actually had tried to record once, and we had some technical difficulties.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we tabled it.
Yep.
For the better part of a month and a half now.
Yeah,
it's been a minute. Yeah. So we're gonna try to bring this one back.
Let's do it.
Because we do think that it's
Revive
an interesting
some life into it.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting conversation or interesting topic, where we kind of look at some of the RBA, people, athletes who have transformed their career post whatever their athletic, accomplishments were, and taking what they did on the field, but being able to parlay that into a successful career off the field. So we call it life after sports, right?
Okay.
And so before we get into like specific situations, I know we're going to kind of like talk about it and box it into a couple of different categories of some of our favorites and some of our success stories that we particularly like, which I'm sure we're going to miss something, and somebody in the comments will be like, well, what about
to them I'm gonna say thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you for bringing it up. Bring it up more. We want to hear all of them, but we're going to go through ones that hit home or resonate for us. But before we do that, I just wanted to talk to you just in more general terms. Like, what are some of the characteristics or skills, or like, what do you think translates from the field, the court, the whatever arena, athletic arena that the athlete is honing their craft in? What helps to translate into kind of that next phase of their career, or based off of what you've seen?
I mean, I think it's a good question. And I think now when we see athletes, so I'm going to preface it before I give my answer, that you could kind of see it coming. Now when you see their personalities in their endeavors that they have now, you could see kind of like, for the most part, not everybody, kind of stemming and oh yeah, I could see him doing this because he was like this when he was doing that. Right? Like Shannon Sharp.
Yeah, right.
Perfect example, just a prime example.
Like you could see it on Hard Knocks. Yeah.
Right. You could see like Ocho. You saw his antics on the field, Terrell Owens, right? These guys were, oh yeah, I can see them doing this. It's in their lane. This is what they were doing, and they're just doing it at a different, on a different field. And I think that a lot of those abilities, some of them, or the abilities will be the ability to connect with others. That's and that's like life. That's life. That's the office, wherever you work, whoever you deal with, coaching. Whatever you do, there's the ability to connect with another human being. Now, whether that's in our previous episode, tailgating, right? You're connecting with your like-minded people in this community. So that, I think, is probably the biggest thing. To connect with others.
Okay.
Sharing those stories or those experiences where others can relate to you and connect with you. Because as an athlete, you're so far removed in the sense of like the average person's ability to go and reach out or connect with them, or to even speak to them or relate with them, until you see the flip side. Oh, this guy's just like me, right? When they bring locker room talk to your dearest device, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, they're just like me. We have barbershop talk, they have locker room talk, and they're just doing it amongst, just the fellas getting together doing their thing. So I think the ability to connect, ability to just have this understanding of how to relate with people, how to draw them in, and this concept of teamwork, camaraderie, chemistry.
You're just gonna steal mine. You're just gonna do a monologue.
We think
and
alike.
Steal my. Okay,
we think alike. That's all. Hey, we brothers, right? We started the show, right? My brother.
That's right.
So let me pass it to you then, I guess. So
that was one that I was gonna say, because I think that's one, the idea of teamwork and being able to, particularly for athletes that do team sports, right, is learning how to operate within a team, to be a team member, potentially be a leader. Not everybody's leaders though.
No.
But there are certain realms, if you like athletes that have gone into coaching, like leadership then becomes a key piece of it. But I think the idea of just teamwork, because even when you transition into something else, you're likely, there probably are some examples of a person who they only have their own business and they just do their own thing. But I think the majority of folks are working within some kind of team. Even if they have their own like podcast, for example, they're going to have the means to have a team. Wouldn't that be nice?
Oh,
the means to have a whole team around them.
Some are building towards it.
Some are building them.
Yeah.
Shout out to Antonio.
Absolutely.
But some are building towards that. And I think just being able to operate, within that team style is definitely a key factor. And then I think being able to communicate, especially I know we're going to talk a lot about like media and everything, is you have to be able to communicate.
Absolutely.
And communicate with people and communicate effectively, especially in today's day and age, where
communicate carefully,
like everything's under the microscope. Everything's even when you don't mean to, you might catch a hot mic. This guy's finishing my sentences. Like you didn't catch a hot mic and you're done for. So, so I think that it's, those are some of the aspects that I think about, like our world outside of the podcast, or what we do in the 9 to 5 that would translate to that type of environment. But same thing happens, like, a team is a team, and you all are going for some kind of goal, whatever that goal is, and being able to kind of be effective in that and then parlay that into the next thing is, I think, really important.
Yeah. No, great point, man.
So kind of setting the stage for that. And I'm sure there's many other skills and characteristics or attributes out there. So let us know in the comments. But what are some athletes that have transitioned to another phase, another second career, that really have resonated with you? And kind of maybe we'll just go one for one back and forth, because you probably might take all mine in one 10-minute, 15-minute monologue.
I won't.
But we can kind of just like, pass the mic a little bit back and forth. But there's a couple of different categories. So maybe we start with categories. I think that we could put some in, at least initially. We might come up with more on the fly. But we have like the business of sport, like coaching or general manager or ownership. We've seen some transitions there. We've got like the transition traditional media. We've got the quote unquote new media, thinking about podcasts and all these different platforms because of the rise of social media. The folks now have these different platforms that they own, but they may partner with bigger corporations. Think Pat McAfee with ESPN, Club Shay Shay with The Volume, etc. So you have your own platform that you own, but you partner with a bigger, entity, or maybe you just own it flat out and don't partner with anybody. You just upload it on YouTube weekly. but that new media, and then other, more non-sports related or other fascinating careers that we've seen people get out there. Because I got one for that one that is relevant in the news this past week and a half, by the time this episode drops.
Okay.
And it's going to be an interesting one. But so with that, let's start with coaching. And I know what you're going to say. I know right where you're going. But I'm gonna just let you cook.
Coaching, when you
like
say
a player who's transitioned effectively from playing into coaching, and there's been a lot of players who've gone on to be coaches.
See, my mind was elsewhere. Wasn't thinking coaches, so I have no idea.
Well, that's the first box.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know what to.
Oh, come on! When I say it, you're gonna be like, "It's the most dynamic recent one, the hottest coach out there."
Well, I wouldn't say recent, but I would say one that has gone from playing to coaching and has gained a lot of success has been Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr has truly, and whether you say that, he fell into the right situation or whatnot, Steve Kerr has had one of the most successful careers as a player and coach, period. I don't care what you say about him as an individual talent. But
you're missing some stops in between.
Sure,
because he was a broadcaster, so he was part of the traditional media.
Yep,
and then he was a GM.
He was also on as an analyst with the TNT crew when they would do some of their get together where they discuss the game in more detail. He was part of that. Right. So he's done a lot of. He has one of the greatest careers overall in an entirety. I'm pretty sure that's not who you probably think.
That was definitely not, but that's a great one.
Yeah,
because he literally did. When we talk about the business of sports, and he was a player, successful, winning championships. Because they won because of him, right?
Of course,
they definitely won. Yeah. He hit the shot.
He hit the shot.
We don't talk about Mike.
He hit the shot. That's right. The coach drew up. Remember, like he said in his final speech, that Phil said, "You know what?" Mike said, "Let Steve do it." Let Steve do it. I'm tired. I want Steve to do it.
Let Steve do it. And Steve did it.
Steve did it. But he not only did it with the Bulls, he did it with Spurs too. He did won with them.
He did. And then he came out. He was with media. He was a GM with the Suns. Then went back to coaching. Went to coaching.
Yes.
And took over the Mark Jackson Warriors.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of heavy debate about that. We're not going to get into it today, but. Successful. I mean, you can't argue with the results. Right. That's a great example that I was not expecting you to pull out of the little. Okay.
There you go. I got you.
Man. But I was going to Prime, Coach Prime. Like that's the most recent hottest example of a player who, again, successful playing career, multiple sports. Then and didn't go straight into coaching. But then he had the whole Prime U, and he was developing at the development level, kind of like we, starting with our sons. We didn't have the means to start our own program by any stretch, but started with his sons, the youth, and then now has continued and progressed on.
Right.
One of the hottest, coaches out there. Kind of little fizzling lately. But first season,
nevertheless,
took over a 1-win team.
Correct.
And so see what he does moving forward.
Listen, I admire him for what he did with the HBCU, that side of it. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, just bringing
light and attention to that.
Bringing all the awareness and the cameras and the attention, everything to Jackson State. But you've got others too that have done, but maybe not to the same extent. But you Eddie George and others that have also done very similar types of jobs in that area. So that's interesting. And then we, even just this week, we had a coaching change in the NFL. Talking about recent news, the Raiders fired Josh McDaniels.
I did see that.
The interim coach is Antonio Pierce, former Giants linebacker, back from the championship days.
Hey.
He was with the Commanders. Well, it used to be a different name, but with the Washington football team as well, but with the Giants too. But he was actually from Oakland. Back when the Raiders there, grew up in Compton. Not from Oakland, but grew up in Compton. but it was from the area. Grew up a Raiders fan. He said he said in his press conference he grew up with the Raiders, the NWA, and the hats and everything. So you got a former player who has come up, has a chance to make his mark, potentially take over the team full time. We've had other instances of that. D'Amico Ryans last year taking over for the Houston Texans. Drafted quarterback. They're having themselves a decent first year, starting off not playoffs, but definitely not worst team in the league status by all. So you've got a lot of former players that get the opportunity to take over teams. We see it a lot in basketball too. Yeah. I mean, a lot in basketball.
More so than any other sport.
Probably more so, I think, than even football. Than we see it there. Because that grind of football,
it is
to do coaching is a little different.
It is.
It's a little different. You got to come all the way up. There's so many different positional groups and all of that, but not to say there's no grind in basketball. Somebody's gonna say it, right? Like, what do you mean basketball is easy? Okay, so that was a great example. Steve Kerr, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I got you, man.
All right, so when we think about traditional media, then, like, who's the name or names that pop into your head about athletes who have transitioned to, the traditional media side?
Traditional media, like, I want to say this, I'm not a huge fan of watching traditional media, but if I was to watch, I really enjoy watching. And here's the funny part. The people I enjoy watching are also part of new media. They do like a swap,
crossover.
Right? Yeah, crossover. So that's why I love watching JJ Redick. I love hearing his takes, and he really keeps things in perspective. He doesn't go off these like wild, emotional filled rants of, whatever they're feeling that day. It's a very rational conversation and an assessment of, as a former player, here's what you old media don't get to see or don't experience or have never experienced, and here's how it is. Here's what we feel. Here's how we operate. Here's what we think. And that's why I really enjoy watching him cross over into old media to kind of bring the realistic side of it, like the actual, not, I can sit there and have all the opinions and thoughts I want about what happens inside a locker room or how players approach. But until I've done it, I have no idea. Right? So he brings that to that, which is why I love watching him more so than I like watching the traditional old media guys, Shannon Sharp. I love hearing him, but not the people he's usually debating against.
Okay.
So because they have more weight, more substance to their.
So for me, the one example that I'm going to pull from is because I think that they were new media before new media was a thing. They were different. They were traditional media, studio show, but they were different than what the traditional media at the time was.
Okay.
And it's evolved over time, but that's the Inside the NBA crew.
Oh yeah.
Because when they pulled in, Kenny and Chuck, and then once they got Shaq to round out that squad, man, they were doing things that were not traditional,
right,
for studio analysts to do, right? Segments that were not traditional.
But originally, it was just Kenny and EJ.
Right.
That's how it started.
But I'm saying once it grew and they got the personalities because the entertainment value from it. But not just entertainment, because these dudes can still break down the game.
Absolutely.
Right. But when they got the personalities together to make it all mesh, they were doing things that were outside of the box of what any other studio show was doing. Right. Particularly as studio shows were all moving to debate style formats. You had the cold pizzas and the first takes, back in the day on ESPN, and tons of former players. Like you go on ESPN right now, it's like tons of former. It's either former players or former beat writers for teams or journalists, right? And it's just them going at it all the time. You could spend a whole episode talking about all the different former players on there. But I think for inside the NBA, and you're talking about that mid 2K time frame when it was coming all together. I don't remember what year Shaq retired, but once that was all coming together, like they just created such a dynamic show that to this day, like people will tune in to watch. Like I would tune in to watch that. It's probably one of the only traditional media shows that I would tune in to really watch, because it's entertaining, but it's also informative, and they also talk about the games, and they also debate each other, but in a funny way, but it's sometimes a serious way, but you never know quite what you're going to get, and it keeps it fresh and exciting to watch.
That's why I love when they play pranks on each other. Yeah. Because it's just not traditional.
Yeah.
So you reminded me of one, which I believe was new media before new media became a thing. And it's sad that it didn't last till now, but this was Jalen and Jacoby.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that. Jalen would come with his bat, his slugger, and he would give some of like the most in-depth inner knowledge, inner workings of this athlete side of things. And it was true gems of knowledge that he was dropping week after week, every episode. And I loved listening to him. And Jacoby was a great counterpart to that. But Jalen Rose, to me, is one of like the GOAT like media personalities.
That was like the early days of podcasting.
Yes.
Before it was a cool thing to have your own podcast.
Correct.
You know what? Now you reminded me of another one that was tied to ESPN, and it wasn't like a studio show or anything else, but it was a little mini series that they had going on for a while with Kobe called Details. Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
Another one to just where it was something different, unique, and you talk about the ability to break down the game into the smallest little, like, you understood why people say he was like a psychopath in the court. Like, you could understand it just by hearing him break down the game. You're like, why? No, a normal person wouldn't think of this. Like, they wouldn't think this way. They wouldn't see it this way.
What I loved about that Details was that actual players that he chose to do details on would watch that over and over again to learn from and then apply to their own game. That's how much respect this player had, though, right? That's why I love hearing players speak about it versus those who tried and failed, like us. Right? It's more so, if Kobe's saying something, I need to pay attention.
Right.
Even if I'm playing the game at a high level.
Right. No, the weight is behind it.
Yeah. And he also did these other animated series. I don't know if you've seen it, where he talks about how to defend, or how he made like a nursery rhyme out of being a right-handed player. If you're only a right-handed player, you're half a player. He did it on Kyrie, where he like ripped him in half. And if you can't go left, then the whole left side of the floor is missing. You're a half one-sided player. You're blah, 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 blah. He broke it all down beautifully in like artistic form. So, yeah.
No, he was definitely, man, he was transitioning to a different type of second career that we just,
the world
lost out on that. And not just the person, but all the more information and
the
value that he was going to bring to us, man. Okay, so let's go to the new media, because I know that there's so many examples. And I know some of your favorites already, so I'm kind of anticipating. So I'm gonna let you go to see where I can fit in after you're done, because I know what you listen to. You know how I know. For the folks out there, so they know how I know. It's because I get the reels, and I get the TikToks, and I get the YouTube shorts of little clips from all your favorite shows all the time. Sometimes I'll be in like back-to-back meetings, and next thing I know, got like 10 clips. I'm like, when am I going to watch these?
Oh no, it's important that you stop the meeting to listen to these.
No.
Or play it for everybody so they can learn.
I gotta like save it for after the kids go to sleep. Like, okay, let me sit down and watch all Hex. Let me sit and watch Hex barrage of videos. No, we do it to each other though.
No. So my all-time favorite, and you already know this, and that's a two-parter. One is No Chill Gil, and the other is Gil's Arena, both by the same guy, but the other one is with other former players who get together, like Kenyon Martin, Kmart, Brandon Jennings, Rashad McCants, and Gil are mostly, for the most part, are regulars on that show. And then No Chill Gil has his own, just with him and the host Josiah Johnson, I believe. And they really, and I like the No Chill Gil one a lot because he really breaks it down to like super fine detail that without other players really interrupting or providing their, like, he really gets to finish a thought in full and complete. And it's again, to me, he's the next burst version of Kobe. And that's saying a lot. That's
Gil?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The knowledge this man drops. And I did not appreciate him for what he was when he was playing. But he literally is the next version of Kobe if you listen to what he says.
From a basketball mind.
From a basketball mind. Correct. He is, it's ridiculous some of the things the way he thought the game back then, man, like, we underappreciated this man. And it's sad that the way his career ended, but man, if I could go back and really go back, one thing I missed out on was watching Gil. Yeah, so now I'm a true fan all the way through.
Okay, interesting.
He's my bucket list.
Yeah, man, I get a lot of Gil clips.
Oh, listen, my son gets a lot of Gil, a lot of Gil. But again, the knowledge is there.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely
behind it.
They got some, and then they got some fun moments too.
Of course, yeah.
And I like the balance with Josiah too. So,
yeah.
I think for me, and I'm more preferential towards football.
Sure, yeah.
As well. So I think it's got to be the pivot for me. I mean, obviously there's other, Shannon, Club Shay is good, and some others, but I think the pivot, man, like, I Am Athlete has so much potential. If it wasn't just run into the ground by somebody who he just bad business practices. And there's been a lot that's come out about that recently. A lot of things have been resurfaced within the past week. But even before that stuff resurfaced and I saw those clips, there was a new episode. I think it was the one with Tyreek Hill and Brandon. And I was listening, and I believe it's just the two of them. Okay. And I was just like, this really isn't it. Not the way it used to be. Like, it didn't feel like he was, I don't know, pressing it for some reason. It just felt like it was being pressed. Like, I got to make this successful. And the questions that were being asked, and like, it was like almost trying to force content or force a clip instead of it just being more of a natural conversation.
Genuine, authentic.
Right. Yeah. Like when Shannon Crowder said something crazy, I mean, it's the natural, like that's just him. Yeah. Whereas this was, and it wasn't saying anything crazy. It was like trying to force a narrative around like mental health, right? And that's great. And that's definitely his shtick, but like not every episode can be talking about mental, like, that's true. And it seems like every episode that I've watched, it's always about the same type of thing. It's like, okay, well, let's peel back the layers and let's figure out what gives you, makes you sad. And like, that's how I felt with when he was talking about Tyreek. Like, it's like, you're always happy. What makes you sad? And like, he's like, well, I got some family stuff going on. Don't really want to talk about it. Like, okay, well, so just, and then he had to sit and talk about it vaguely for, however many minutes they were. It just felt off. Like, it didn't feel natural like it used to back in the day. But switching back to the original answers, like, the pivot is just more, like, you can tell they really enjoy themselves. Obviously they know their stuff, but they bring in different guests too. It's not just all football, right? Whereas like No Chill is all basketball, and that's great for if you're like a basketball like junkie. What I like is that they cover football, but they also bring in other, esteemed guests and cover different areas, even though it's not in their wheelhouse, but they cover it from like a humanity type of perspective, which is something we want to do. Like eventually be able to do interviews, some days with athletes of all different genres and athletics, and just get to learn things that we're not even fans of. Right. Like, agreed. Different sports that we've never really maybe even watched, and find out how RBA, those sports might be.
Right.
So that's one of the things. And I think, again, it goes back to like what we're talking about in the beginning, the personalities, the crossover skills of being able to have the respect of the people watching, but also like you got to have the entertainment value too.
Sure.
And the collaboration and cohesion, especially if you're not doing it by yourself, right? Like if you and I didn't know each other so well, like it would be maybe a little more disjointed and awkward, but you finish my sentences. So
no, I do want to say something. Like I Am Athlete was one of my favorite podcasts.
It was.
I used to watch it. I remember when it first came on, and I would send you clips like, yo, you need to get on this.
Yeah.
Because I remember when they were in this little restaurant.
Yep.
And they started off then, and they had different players then. But the core group of, Ocho, Chad, Fred, and Brandon, that was like my must watch. And one thing I do have to credit them for, though, when we say expanding outside, like they brought attention to NASCAR through that podcast to an audience that generally knows nothing about NASCAR or is not even interested in it, like me. And I got interested, like, oh, this is pretty cool. And they would go and do these things like on site. And I was really enjoying it. And it's sad that it ended the way it did. And that's part of life. Like Shannon and
Skip,
right? So, and that happens in sports. You don't get along with everybody.
Yep. Good teams get broken up.
Correct. And same thing here. Same thing at a job. You may not like everybody you work with.
Right.
However,
your work bestie might get another job.
Correct.
And that better not happen. But I'm not putting that out there in the universe because my work besties, man, if they get another job, I'm fucked.
Right. So and
they gonna hear this too.
And with that being said, you got to learn how to play in the sandbox. Like I always say, listen, I'm not here to make friends. I'm just here to get along.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
If we become friends through this, great. But that doesn't mean we're obligated to become friends.
No, but I mean, I think.
But if we get along and and it's great working team.
But as a counter to that, like if you are like you or me or like they are on a pivot, it just boosts up the value of the show that much more. Right? Yeah, I mean, but obviously, if you start it randomly.
But if you have come in together to build something together, then yes, you have to. You need that.
Exactly.
But if you just go to a job, it's different, right?
Yeah, that's different.
But so in that sense, yes, I used to watch I Am Athlete all the time, but it's unfortunate what happened. This is why I love watching Gil for some of like the crazy antics he does, and the serious side that people generally ignore that he does. And we'll get through, I guess, some other.
One of the more underrated ones that I like is Jeff Teague's new show, 520.
Yeah, that is underrated.
And because
they're signed up under Shay Shay now, I believe.
Yeah, but I mean, I love hearing the old Atlanta stories. His stories are fun. Yeah. Like who knew? Who said again? Who knew? Like he was a great player.
Yep.
He had a long career. You're not a scrub to have a career like he had.
No, he
wasn't a superstar.
He was part of the 19 streak run.
He was, but like he wasn't a superstar.
Right.
But he was a great player and had a long career in the league. But who knew that he was just funny as hell? And so you get to like build that personality out through, and then even some others. Like obviously as a fan, like Trey, just being able to hear a different side of the not the media answers.
Right.
Because I can listen to all the clips of him answering questions at press conferences, and that's one side of his personality. I'm got to be professional. I'm here to do my job. But on the flip side, now I'm here with my boy that I've known since high school. And then talking to most recently talking to Lou Williams. I was fascinated by the whole episode because that's my fandom, as we talked about in last episodes. You get that knowledge or information of that's really what was happening. They broke down the whole lemon pepper Lou thing in a way of details that we never knew about, and how the media, the traditional media, just ran with the story in a crazy way
because the new media doesn't trust old media because of they take these clips and snippets and make it clickbait-ish,
right?
In essence. Yeah, that's why like I'm a huge fan of new media versus traditional media. That's why I love podcasts like, All the Smoke. I love hearing All the Smoke.
Which might be coming to an end.
Oh, really?
Because Showtime's getting rid of their sports. Did you see that?
That's crazy.
But I mean, obviously, like they're gonna get picked up somewhere.
Sure. But like the other one was Knuckleheads. Love hearing Knuckleheads. Like I wasn't a fan of the play. I was never a fan of these players. But I'm a fan off the court. When they got off the court and got into their personal endeavors, like I'm a fan, and that's why I'm a big fan of athletes who are currently still active. And this could be another bucket. I'm assuming you're gonna. Yeah. So athletes who are still in their current fields, actively participating and performing, who are building that second life while doing so.
Yep.
And were you going to speak about this?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
For example, like one of my biggest examples that I is like Draymond or Damian Lillard. These guys are
Trey. I just used
Trey.
one.
Yeah, Trey. Exactly. Right. These guys are. It's one thing to stop and then completely dedicate to this new second field, but to do it, build it while you're in it, like that's a balancing act. Again, we act like, oh, why aren't you practicing? Like, listen, like they have enough downtime, so I admire the fact that there's more awareness for this now than it was before. Back then, nobody. Even if people did think about it, it was shunned upon per se.
Well, I mean, I don't see the problem why Draymond can't hop on his iPhone camera, or right. I mean, I don't know if probably uses a professional camera, but whatever, a professional camera setup in his hotel room,
right,
after a playoff game to break down his thoughts for 30 minutes. Like, what else he's supposed to be training for that 30 minutes while he's in his hotel room trying to rest?
Listen, nobody does their job.
It's crazy.
24/7.
Correct.
So let the man live.
Yeah.
Now that you have a choice, tune in or tune out.
Now let me ask you this. Do you think that athletes who do start it, particularly, so like Draymond has started his towards the twilight of his career, but there are other athletes that have started it in the
early on. Yeah.
Do you think that if they continue on and reach that level of longevity, do you think they'll have enough content to last beyond playing days?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because the one thing these athletes have that regular folks like you and I and others don't.
Shit happening to them every day, all hours of the day.
That too, but even more valuable than that. You want to guess?
No. Go ahead.
Access to other athletes.
Yeah.
Access to other teammates who, for example, every time Gilbert Arenas ends up on any podcast, I don't care whose podcast, I never even heard of it, I'm tuning in. Kobe entered any podcast, I'm tuning in. Michael Vick hits a podcast, I'm tuning in.
Oh, I definitely hit up when Vic was on.
Right? It doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter what podcast he's hitting. And those athletes have access to players like that. Right? So that's the thing. Like KG has his KG certified. He has, Paul Pierce on there with some crazy wild takes. However, I'm tuning in when they have the right fan that, I'm a fan of, right player I'm a fan of, or I respect or admire. So in that sense, these guys will have enough content to last them for however long. So
what I heard was that we need to get Gil on the podcast.
Absolutely.
So we need
my bucket list.
We need to find somebody who has access to be able to get built. Because I would love to see you and Gil breaking down the intricacies.
Listen, I'm nowhere near like.
No, but I mean, I think you would have some really creative questions and perspectives that I would be interested to see how he responds to.
Oh, I do have very like. See, the questions though I have are very like. Only another shooter would.
Right. No, I mean that's why I want to hear it. Like.
Right, because I have such like these minutia, detailed questions. Of, like,
it would be great.
Him or JJ Redick. Like I really want to like have a conversation with those kind of people about like that.
Like really, when JJ and Cam Johnson was breaking down the shot and like that into crazy detail.
Like I want to have an episode called like Shooter's Paradise. Like just have is really, and this may not be for everybody, but it's something that I would really like. I get giddy over.
Oh, listen, I'll be there with my popcorn, just wanting to watch.
Listen, man, you could shoot. You were shooting.
Yeah, I'm gonna just help facilitate that one. I'm gonna let you and Gil duke it out.
Listen, there's nothing to duke out. I'm learning. I'm a student. I'm a student. He's a teacher.
He'll be like, respectfully, I have a difference of opinion with you.
Hey, Gil, listen. Here's my perspective. What do you think? And you may think it's trash.
And he'd be like, what level did you play?
Listen, man.
So when we talk about players, like current players, so from the football world, man, the Kelseys.
Yes.
That's it's such a cool thing for the two brothers to be able to go at this day and age. Now you don't have to be in the same city. You're there recording
virtually,
like get to do it with your brother. Like
it's crazy. It's awesome.
It's awesome. And then setting themselves up for something more down the road where, once they're both retired, I wouldn't be surprised to see them have their own show. Absolutely.
That's why I really, one thing I really enjoy about Gil, when he was building it up, he would bring on just people you never know. Like he brought his old high school coach on once. Mm-hmm. And he would tell stories about how Gil, he could see Gil becoming Gil. Things we never saw.
Yep.
And I'm only saying Gil because I watch him so much. But there are other players.
Clearly. Gil, you need to come on, man.
You call me a fanboy, call me whatever you want, Gil. That's much respect.
I haven't heard too many Gil fanboys, so you might be in an exclusive club.
Listen, I'm always in. Already me and my list of people I get on.
And definitely not traditional, outside the box.
Always.
I'm sure that there's still a lot of Gil fans out there, but I mean, not to that watch as much of the content as you do.
Oh, I'm there, man.
I know you're there for it.
Yeah.
So before we transition to the other bucket,
sure,
which is everything else, we had to just quickly, we'd be remiss if we don't talk about probably, arguably, the most successful, at least in recent history.
Okay,
and that's Pat McAfee. When you talk about a former player who has transitioned into that new sports media world, he started his own thing with his boys in Indiana, got all of them to move to Indianapolis, right? Because he had boys all from all over, got them all to move to Indianapolis, start their lives around building this Pat McAfee show.
Right.
And then not only build it up to be this massive success on YouTube, he had crossover into College Game Day, WWE.
Yeah.
Partnered then with FanDuel for what was it, $130 million?
Some obscure amount, yeah.
Got out of that to partner with ESPN, but still own his own shit too.
Yeah, that's the important thing.
Like the running joke is about how many F words they sneak in or don't sneak in for ESPN. Like, but they don't censor him. They just let him be because that was what made him. That's
correct.
what clearly the numbers show. That's what the audience wants.
Right.
So let Pat be Pat, but he's crossed over into so many other areas. Like it's crazy. And he did it with him and his boys.
Yeah, he did
it his way.
He's a pioneer.
He did it his way with him and his boys.
You know what's crazy about him is I love because he's so raw and authentic and people relate to that. Like he'll get Aaron Rodgers, who's tough to get on for most people, a lot of people, regularly, and have open conversations with him.
But here's the thing though. So this is when we're talking about I Am Athlete and bad business practices. Here's the thing, because I don't know if you heard about the recent controversy with that.
No.
The whole thing blew up. Pat McAfee pays Aaron Rodgers millions of dollars for his appearances.
Oh.
And Pat was like, of course I do. What do you mean? Like I asked one of my friends to come on here. He's part of the numbers and the revenue that's generated. Why would I not?
Correct. We share in our success.
And that's the exact words that he.
Oh, is that what he said?
He used. He shared. Now he's got JJ Watt, who also comes on regular. Like, why would I not pay them?
Right.
They're taking out their time to make my show successful.
Correct.
They're bringing in viewers that want to hear from them. Right. Why would I not? But there was an uproar that he was paying. Bruh, like
I think that term is called business.
It's so crazy.
It's called.
So you talk about business practices and how they go. Like he's one.
I'm sorry, you bring in a guest speaker for a conference. What do you pay them? They come on their, out of the goodness of their own heart.
I mean, and there might be cases where somebody like, oh, this is an old childhood friend and there's no budget to bring the speaker in, but I'm going to come do it for them. But like every Tuesday,
correct.
They call it Aaron Rodgers Tuesday.
As somebody that's an elite at what they do, you call them in
during the season, and you don't think like
you should compensate them.
Absolutely. So like, again, just another great example of like, and coming from like, he was a punter. Just put it out there.
That's the other thing. He was a punter.
But he was entertaining.
Yeah.
He could communicate, has leadership, vision. Yeah. But my thing was that he did it with his boys. And even the athletes he would bring on in the beginning, for before Aaron Rodgers, he's bringing on former teammates that he had. Vontae Davis are bringing on now Chuck Pagano. Like he's bringing on people that he knew. Right. But then also like being able to take his brand and go to College Game Day. Started with guest appearances there. Now they do a deal with that. Right. Okay, now I'm going to go to WWE for a while. Now he's been popping in and out of there. Right? Yeah. Every time it's continuing to build up the Pat McAfee brand. ESPN now. Boom. Like dude's a megastar. Yeah. He's a megastar and the most successful in new media. Hands like I don't think you can tell me there's anybody who's more successful.
So new media, yes, but I would challenge that with somebody more successful.
Okay.
Kanye said, like, how much more do you want?
How much more success can you have?
So The Rock.
Well,
right. We say wrestling is you consider wrestling the toughest sport. Mm-hmm. This man transitioned from that to mega superstar at a global level. Yeah. Right? The Rock has transitioned.
He did. No, that's
right. So you got
that's him. A good one.
You got someone crazy like George Foreman. George Foreman boxing. Now you know him for the grills. And apparently that's $1 billion business.
But we didn't get to that's the other group.
That's the other group? All right. Yeah, all right. So my bad.
But no, The Rock is a good one. I mean, but what The Rock did was not completely unprecedented. Mm-hmm. Whereas I feel like the Pat McAfee really kind of came. It was
no doubt.
Like no doubt. It was what he's been able to do is unprecedented.
No, I agree. In that lane and that new media, yes, absolutely.
Like in wrestling, they had wrestlers that they wanted to become actors, right? The WWE wanted the Hulk Hogan. They wanted to become he was on Thunder in Paradise and he was in the movies and Mr. Nick. Like so, The Rock was following that same kind of trajectory of, okay, your wrestling career is dwindling down. Let's see, you have the personality where you could be a box office draw in Hollywood versus I'm just going to do this thing with my boys on the internet and see where it can go. Can you think from day one to where they are now that he ever dreamed that it would get to that point?
I don't think anyone predicted it.
So again, that's where I look at the unprecedented. The only other example that I might throw in there as well that's underrated is Rich Eisen. You know who Rich Eisen is for NFL Network? Yeah. And the creation of NFL Network. Okay. Because NFL Network wasn't a thing. They just celebrated their 20 years this year. And he was like the pioneer behind it. But he used to be a Sports Center anchor and journalist and everything on ESPN. And he was a real driving force. I don't know all of the details. I'm sure there's many more smart people that on the internet that will Google it and know all the details. But I know he was a driving force and the face behind it, because I remember the commercials and the ads when they were about to launch was like, it's good to be rich, right? Like that's how they were saying, it was like good to be rich. Okay. And he's been there the entire way building up this NFL Network. And that's more of the traditional media side to where it gets overlooked. Like this man built up a whole network. Or then you also got NFL Red Zone as well with Scott Hansen. It's like there's a lot of different endeavors that. But they're not former athletes, so I guess we're kind of I'm going off on a little tangent. But either way, all right. So that other box. So you want to go with George Foreman? That's your answer.
No, that's just one.
You know how did we talk about that in another episode?
What's that?
How George Foreman got the George Foreman grill?
I think it was offered to somebody else, and then he took it. I can't remember who it was, the initial person.
So there was a grill and a blender.
That's it.
It was a grill and a blender. A phone call was made to two people.
Uh-huh.
One to George Foreman, one to Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan, that's it.
Hulk Hogan didn't get the call in time. Foreman got the call in time. He answered first. He got the grill. Hulk got the blender.
The rest
Foreman got rich. Hogan's just fine. He's all right.
He's all right.
The blender didn't do good, but he's okay.
He's okay.
He's fine.
But Foreman is rich beyond means.
Rich beyond means.
Yeah.
With the grill.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, right. What other examples?
Like Tony Hawk.
Okay.
Tony Hawk, right? All this entire conglomerate he built off of.
Yeah.
He's one of the greatest skaters alive. To now video games and shoes and everything else in between. That wasn't common for a skater or that genre or that sport to expand the way it did. So Tony Hawk is really went out there and did his thing, especially with the gaming world. That's where I feel like, wow, like you took over that part too. Like that's impressive to me. And I'm sure he's done many other great things which I am unaware of, and I'm sure more smarter people can tell me. But I immediately think of him along with the George Foreman thing, like where this guy really went off. So then there's people who went to politics.
Yeah, like, that's Jesse Ventura from wrestling.
Like Bill Bradley from basketball. Like who would have thought that?
Yeah,
right. Kevin Johnson, I believe, from this point guard.
Yeah,
for
he was
the
the mayor of Sacramento or something. Yeah.
So like, really, I didn't see this coming. Like, I guess the leadership part, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not politics. So yeah.
Well, I have a more recent example that I'm going to use, and I don't even know if you probably don't even know who this is, but because you don't be on the TikTok like that, but too much. You're more of an IG guy.
Yeah.
But there's a guy on TikTok, Keith Lee, and Keith Lee's been making some waves this past week. Okay. So Keith Lee is a former MMA fighter, but he took to TikTok when TikTok was blowing up, and he became a TikTok food critic. Okay. And so it started locally with like going to restaurants, and bro, he has helped so many restaurants, like little hole in the wall places that he would go to, be like, man, the customer service is great, the food is great. How are there not like lines of people? And so he was starting to blow up, and drawing attention to all of these restaurants, like all these little mom and pops places.
Oh, that's awesome.
And now he started to go to other cities and do that. And all these different places will DM him like, you need to come here, I need to try it. Right. But the one thing he does, and this is where he's caused waves, is he tries to go in to where they don't know it's him.
Got it.
Like he'll have it under with his wife's name or another family member's name, or has other family go in.
Does he go in disguise?
I think he did disguise like once or twice, but I don't think it worked. I could be wrong, but I don't think it worked. It mainly is like trying to get somebody and get it under somebody else's name, so they just don't know,
or something,
and get like a real true review.
Okay.
And he does tell people like, if I do it, like I'm gonna give the real review regardless. Well, that has come to a head in Atlanta over the past couple weeks. So he's been in Atlanta, and let's just say the number of positive reviews have not been glaring as there's been more glaring the number of negative reviews, and it's got the whole Atlanta restaurant scene in an uproar. But but that's because, like there's been examples.
Was the lemon peppers good?
It wasn't the lemon pepper. No. But these are like, he doesn't go to real like big chain places. These are small local places. Okay. And they had, for example, one place, a couple places actually, his family couldn't get a table. But then when they said they were with him, they got a table. And so like stuff like that he would find that he didn't like. He's like, I don't think that's
I ain't with that.
But then there's other things that some of them, the the quality wasn't there, the customer service wasn't there. So it's just been, so he's been getting a little bit of flack for it.
Step your game up.
He's been getting a little flack for it, but I use that as a new example of taking like, okay, well, I had this MMA career, but he's not like one of the top MMA guys or anything like that, but parlaying that into, well, I'm going to take this trend of using this social media platform, but what am I going to do? Oh, well, I'm going to do this that not only can help me build a life for my, continue to build a life, because he had, like, I'm not saying his whole life is dependent on this, but continue to build the life that he wants to build, but also, as he's done in many cases, help a lot of these struggling businesses by putting a spotlight on the good food that is out there.
Right.
Like, bruh. I like the cause part of it, as well as the actual just creativity behind it. Like, how, like, I want to ask him, like, how did you come up with it? Yeah. Right? Like, it's creative.
And it's crazy. Usually they just stumble upon something and then say, oh, look at this. It became
and nobody's doing it.
Right. No, that's awesome.
And you just fill this gap seamlessly.
Right. No, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So no, I like, and I love stories like that where athletes take, them for one talent, but then you realize they realize that I got a whole nother talent that you have no idea about.
Right.
And the most popular that comes to mind is the Kobe thing, right? Known as a great basketball player, but then he went and made children's books and won a Grammy for his short story. So, and nobody saw that coming.
Right.
Like, Kobe won a what? Grammy? When did he start acting? But things like that, I love stories like that, because that really, again, colors outside the lines, pushes you beyond the box. Like, you're not boxed. And I want to challenge the rules and break the rules and expand and push that envelope and make you, what do we always say, right? Be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
So that really, to me, is that success story. Like, yes, Jalen Rose, I believe, like early we said, right? Not the best player. I don't even think he was an all-star. Even if he was, maybe a year or two if he was. But when he got to his second career, like, GOAT. In my mind, GOAT. So just, this reminds me of that, this MMA fighter.
Yeah.
So, no, awesome. I love, keep it up.
Yeah.
And but again, if you invite him, like, be ready for the smoke.
You got to be ready for the...
If you like the limelight, then you got to accept the other way too.
Right, yeah. You got to come correct with it, because you can't ask for it.
This isn't MTV Cribs.
Right.
This ain't that.
Like, buy fake houses. Now. Yeah, you really dating yourself.
That's why I love Redman. He refused to do it. If you watch his episode, it's a little small, all messy. He's like, and he was real about it. He's like, I'm not. And because afterwards, he's like, they told me to go buy rent a house. And I was like, nah.
Yeah, no.
So like that's why this ain't MTV Cribs. This ain't.
Yeah. Remember Pimp My Ride?
Pimp My Ride exhibit, right?
Like, no, we're not putting all the smoke and mirrors here. We going straight real. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I think going back to, just to bring it full circle, I think going back to what you said in the beginning, the idea of like connectedness, being able to connect with people, connect with causes, connect with like teammates, if in whatever industry that you're in, really is like the core of it. And but also when you're doing something in the public limelight like that, like you have to have that entertainment value, and not, I don't even know if it's fully entertainment. Like, you have to be engaging. You have to be an engaging personality, right?
Yes.
And that's what will help to draw that connectedness even more.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of like the common thread that I see is like, even though we've talked about a bunch of different people, and for some they may not like them, for some they do, but like for a large portion of an audience, each of them are engaging people.
Absolutely.
In a way that is continuing to have those people come back.
And also, can I add one honorable mention here? Athletes who open platforms for other athletes to really voice and provide that open conversation. Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod. Players Tribune is He started
Yes.
Players Tribune is huge. How many players have come on there and expressed their emotions on there?
Mm-hmm.
So like you may think of him as whatever as a player, but that opening that for other athletes is respect worthy.
Yeah, and again, coming back to connectedness and engaging and being able to work with other people, engage other people. Yeah. Also, in some cases, do something bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
Some of the stuff that we talked about is, like Pat McAfee is going to be fine. He would have been fine. Yeah. Living off his career earnings, investing, doing whatever he did. He could have just went on ESPN, been a regular analyst. He brought his people in with him.
Absolutely.
And now he's changed the lives of a whole bunch of other people that would have never had the platform of that. Right. Keith Lee going out there changing the lives of small business owners. You have also being able to do something bigger than yourself as well. It's
absolutely
huge. That's real Think RBA right there.
That's real. Absolutely.
That's definitely something we resonate with. So with that, any last parting words?
Nah, man, it was awesome.
All right. Well, let us know if I'm sure there's a whole bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Others, but I'm interested to hear from everyone else what they think of when they think of life after sports and some of the athletes who have transitioned to something else, whether that's sports related or not.
Or life during after sports.
But transition into something that, has now they're being known for that. Yeah. In some cases, even more than they were or equally as they were for sports. It's interesting to see what other people think.
Absolutely.
But with that, we'll follow those comments. Until next time,
Think RBA.
Think RBA. Peace.
Peace.